That was anticlimactic. We're live.
Oh, I thought you were going to introduce us. I thought you were going to bring us in, Josh.
I just,
Let's go.
yeah. So I'm Josh
Rally here.
Ferguson. This is Max Zeta, or that's Max Zeta. Um, this is the Coachlogik Mentorship group. It's the free Friday, so basically every first Friday of the month we record a live mentorship call, which is a conversation about coaching, and there are about 1,000 different lenses that we look through to analyze the problem of performance. This one, I'd like to talk about coaching style because recently did a podcast with Christian Carter, and he talked about kind of how he prefers to coach, which is widely dissimilar from the stereotypical like strength coach kind of like persona. And strength coaching has a persona that I would say is stronger than weightlifting coaching. I think weightlifting coaching is kind of an undefined persona. It's like, who's a weightlifting coach? Anyone from the person who just got their level one to someone in a CrossFit gym who happens to be the foremost expert in that gym, all the way to like a Tim Swartz who would be more of that strength coach persona, who's kind of played in the NFL, has a ton of experience in athletics, has a bunch of experience in weightlifting. So you get such varying uh, varying dispositions of who can be a coach and how they coach, that I wanted to get your take on what you think weightlifting coaching is or should be, so that people can kind of reform or form their coaching style to be what they need it to be successful as a weightlifting coach.
That's a good question. I've thought about this a lot, like, especially in situations where, like, as a coach, you get an athlete that, maybe you struggle to work with, or you don't do a good job, and you kind of wonder, like, is there some professional thing you should be doing differently, or you should have a different demeanor or whatever. I would say that there's a lot of just like coaching comes from a place where one athlete or one coach work together, and then it just kind of passes down like a apprenticeship. Like, oh, my coach was this way. He was a hard ass and he pushed me this way. And like, you just kind of adopt that persona because it's like what you know, and maybe it was effective for you, or maybe it worked. But as a coach, like as you start to work with people, it's like the level of, I would say, like, to your point about weightlifting coaches not being as obvious the sort of persona of it. To me, it seems more just that it's so casual. Like it's sort of, it's like people become coaches because like it's just the thing to do when you want to stay in the sport doing it, and you don't have any other, like, there's no like professional route, so you just become a coach. So yeah, I mean, I guess my take is that it feels like it's very much a learned thing. It's behavior and persona and methodology and stuff that is just picked up from your previous coach, or someone you look up to, right? You watch them on YouTube or on whatever, you see them at meets, so you kind of just take on that sort of persona and adopt it.
Well, and this comes up because that conversation with Christian, it was very much like he's the antithesis to a strength coach. He's in the dugout. I saw a picture. He's in the dugout of a softball game and in jeans and had a chain wallet and like jewelry, and like he's into kind of Eastern philosophy and like Buddhism, and he kind of coaches in a similar vein to how he is, just organically. So there's not like he said he's kind of like anti rah in your face, whistle blowing, clap it up type. That's the traditional stereotype of a strength coach. It's like someone with a whistle yelling at you, someone who's like hyper masculine. And what you end up getting, I think, is people who fit that or do it well, or people who accommodate that. And a good example is I did a project last semester of female strength coaches, or looking at females in strength and conditioning, and there was a paper, there's some work done, and it talked about women who got into strength and conditioning coaching, who were in their like late career, so had been in it for a long time, like decades. They talked about like, here were the struggles I went through. The people I worked with who were also female they should go through those same struggles because I had to go through them. So it's almost like this tradition of, we kind of fit to the mold, and then other people are going to have to fit to the mold as well, because that's the process.
Yeah.
So in strength coaching, that tends to be more obvious. I think we have kind of an idea of what a strength coach is. In weightlifting, you're right. It's just like, it's so heterogeneous that, you get people who are that strength coach type, and then you get people, I would even say like yourself, who's so easygoing, laid back, and casual. And maybe you run a quick little case study for us why your coaching style is the way it is, given who you've worked with, which are like Steve Goff, Ivan Abajev. Like, those don't come to mind when we think about your coaching style, which is kind of like laid back, kind of joking and fun, and it's kind of the antithesis to those two models.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably that it's much more. I mean, I would say there's been different times and different people. When I was coaching, it really depends on the person. I think you have to, as a coach, if you're good, you have to adapt a bit to the personality. If you have a person who is going to thrive off of being pushed hard and being challenged, and you being, aggressive with them, you have to lean into that, right? And then the other side, it's like, if you're coaching someone who just, who needs to be held back, or who needs to be, kind of reined in, or you have to deal with that. One a good example actually is like, and I've worked with a lot of athletes where I can think of several athletes, and even some I work with, where they are really negative in their self-talk, and they might not be aware of it. It might just be like, that's a cultural thing. If you grew up as a gymnast or something, and had some insane, just crazy whatever, like, you just expect your shit, then you have to sort of play around with that. You can't change that person. You're not going to turn them into somebody who's super positive, but you do have to sort of lean into like, okay, like, you want to feed this person some positivity so that, maybe it starts to back away from some of the like negative whatever. So I would say, I don't think my coaching style is 100% super laid back or not. It really depends on the person. There's been people I've just screamed at inside the gym, and been so livid, and so just absolutely drove me crazy. But then on the other side, it's like, I feel like a lot of coaching has to be the person and the personality. So, like you said, like, my coach Goff and Abajev was he was a black hole. There was just no emotion. It just wasn't like it wasn't a thing like, oh, good job, or oh, bad job. It was just like, this is your job. You just go in and you lift weights, and that's that. And like, and a lot of those Eastern Europeans it's like that, where it's just like, why would I give you praise for doing the lift correctly? Like, that's what you're trying to do. It's what you're supposed to do. So like, that's not a good thing. That's the baseline. Yes, you did it correctly. Yeah, so let's continue to do that. With Goff, it was like, Goff was just like the most absolutely just hard charging, positive, motivated, optimistic person. Everything was going to work out. Everything was going to be great. But he was just like super aggressive, and pushed and just wanted to always see more on the bar. I do that a lot. I mean, when I coach people, I do that stuff. I just don't have that same level of like, getting in their face and, getting them excited and riled up as much. But it's all just, I probably gravitated more towards being laid back or more casual, because I feel like that the kind of people I work with are already so highly motivated. You don't need to necessarily bring a ton of that. And it just becomes almost like, it's almost too much. It's like, if everybody in the room is just going fucking crazy, like, you build up these high highs and then low lows. So you have to have somebody who's just more even. I mean, an athlete expects that too, right? They don't want to walk in the gym and have a coach who's manic one day and then totally, withdrawn the next. You have to be the same person over and over and over again, so that they feel consistency. They feel a sense of like, the rock is there. They're going to be there when they show up, and the coach is going to just always be the coach. So Yeah. I mean, I would say my coaching style is just something that's evolved over many years of doing it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I didn't, I guess I didn't really consider the context, which I think is the most important thing. So the context in which the person comes up, that can be separate from who they've been coached by. So it's like
Yeah.
if you grow up in kind of a level, laid back, relaxed environment, like having a coach who's hard charging is not going to make you, that all the time.
Right.
There might be some influence, right? Like you might, if you lived in different cultures, your cooking style might take on different bends. You might
Yeah.
use different spices or seasonings, but it's not like you're going to suddenly cook a singular cuisine all the time. So I think that makes sense to me. And then also the influence of like the athlete or the person in front of you and how they approach training. So you're right, like the people we've coached or like the people I've been around, someone like an L who's been weightlifting now for like 10 years and did gymnastics at a high level and loves weightlifting and wants to compete really well and do really well. You probably don't need to fire her up too much. She's going to do the work. She's going to do it as well as she can and do pretty much everything that's written, I would imagine. And like, and express that at a competition. It's more so just like, can you get her on the platform in good shape? And then she'll take care of it. You don't need to smack her on the back and give her some smelling salts. And,
Yeah. I mean, oh, sorry.
go ahead.
I was say, fundamentally, everybody wants the same thing out of this. Like, they might want the thing for different reasons, but everybody wants to get better, right? Everybody wants
Yeah.
to lift more, lift better, feel like they're going to go to a competition and perform well. And the irony is, as a coach, when you're not able to get someone to do that, that's the worst feeling because you're like, what the fuck am I doing wrong? But like, I think sometimes people go down different routes as coaches where they lean down one side or the other, thinking that it's like the end result is that getting better isn't necessarily what people want. It's like building up a community or building up a thing or, creating weird relationships with athletes. Like, so like, I think there's a lot of places for coaches to sort of lose track of like the fundamental, which is like, it's a performance oriented thing. You have to be focused on everybody performing better, lifting better, competing at the highest level. Uh, to sort of put one more caveat on that, the reason why someone wants to be successful in the sport can vary a lot. It could be because your parents did it and you want to prove them wrong, or it could be that whatever, you just really want to do it because it's enjoyable, or you could be good and so people are pushing you, or there's a million reasons, right? Those are personal, but if the coaching is not focused on doing things to help drive people forward, then it starts to get in the way. So if your method or your style of coaching is too aggressive or too passive, and it starts to impact, the way people perform, then you're going to end up in a spot where, you're not doing a good job either way. So it's like, I think that's important to note that like everyone has to have the same outcome or have the same intent with the outcome. We all want people to do better and to lift more and be better at weightlifting. Or powerlifting or whatever, but you can't be in a spot where you're not focused on that and you've turned coaching into this thing that is now maybe it's like a pseudo business thing, or it's a pseudo, like maybe it's your own personal weird stuff that you're dealing with and you're trying to like, build up
True.
You know what I mean? Like, those happen, right? That stuff happens a lot.
Well, and I think that's why that's like common trope of good coach is a chameleon. They're able to take on whatever persona they need given an athlete or a group of athletes or a situation. And I don't think it's so much as in they're changing or they're different, but it's like, what does the situation call for? And at all times, performance is the orientation. And even when you say like, well, it's the person, it's like, well, the person's the orientation for performance. Because if someone's struggling outside of the gym, you're going to try and orient them in a way that's like, well, how do we get you back on track, so to speak? And that's like for the sake of the person, but then it's like, oh, and so so we can train and like have productive training. So a lot of this is like performance is the ultimate orientation, and then it's how do I accommodate each situation to allow for that to express itself. So in a competition, it might be smelling salts and smacks, and in the gym, it might be you got 5 triples, just like do them as well as possible. And we're going to coach you up to your techniques like as congruent with efficient within each set, so we can maximize the training effect. So, and that's you pick up on that. Like when I'm at a competition, it's slightly different from in a gym, but it's like the energy is different, the feel's different. What gets people performing, you know, um, or expressing performance in like one lift on the platform. That's different from we got an entire session of snatches, clean and jerk, squats, and pulls. So that coaching is a bit different. It's more casual, more laid back. It's kind of helping them enjoy the process, right? Versus, okay, we need one big lift. That's it, because we want to win overall or place or whatever it is. So that completely makes sense to me. What's your advice then because weightlifting is kind of, I don't think you pursue it necessarily. I think you find yourself in it, unless you maybe have a lineage or family or friends who kind of like pull you in. But like for people who find themselves in weightlifting and then find themselves coaching, what's your advice to developing, the coaching style that ultimately leaves performance as the orientation, but allows them to like accommodate that given their disposition and preferences and background?
I mean, a lot of it is just like, I think the thing that makes really good coaches good is just the ability to recognize like their own humanity in the person across the room or whatever it is, like the other person, or the ability to just connect with another person. If you can't do that, if you can't make that connection, you just can't coach, right? So like fundamentally, all of these things come down to, can you as a human being connect to another human being and build trust and get them to believe in what you're doing. And then obviously everything on top of that is just you doing what you can with whatever training and programming and coaching, like the technique and stuff. But if you can't connect to somebody, if you can't like actually reach out and like make that fundamental connection, like nothing else really matters. So like every single question that follows has to come back to that, is like, well, are you actually able to, make a human connection with somebody else? And it seems like a simple thing, like, cause it's not hard to like talk to somebody, but it can definitely not happen, or you could just be like a very different, you have a different vibe. Their persona doesn't really drive with yours, or their demeanor or whatever it is doesn't connect with you. So, yeah.
Well, I think that's complicated by the fact that these coaching exchanges, coaching happens over the span of 10 years or 15 years or 5 years. So it's not like, oh, can you act reasonably for a day or a week or a month? But it's like, can you manage the process of 5 to 10 years of development? I mean, I was with Danny the other day, and she was training, was coaching her up a bit, and she's like, I can't believe I've been doing this for 4 years. And it's like, yeah, I pretty much like seeing that entire process from day one to yesterday or the day before, and navigated the entire process with her. So it's like, yeah, everyone can coach really well and be super suave and convincing and perfect for a day or a week or a month, but it's like, can you be authentic and effective and performance driven, but also person driven for 10 years? And that's like, you got to develop. You either have to develop that, or you have to be just innately just very, skillful with that stuff. Because I think, and I've been thinking about this recently, because I haven't been reading too much literature on training, and I haven't been thinking about training as much. And I feel like you probably hit a saturation point where it's like, with the technique, yeah, once you figure that out, realistically, there's not much to explore. And then with training and programming, it's like you kind of hit a saturation point where it's like, then what becomes the challenge is accommodating the day-to-day swings, but also the ability to pivot when things aren't working well. It's like, how do you make good decisions after you've implemented something that's either effective or not, and then narrowing that and making it more and more to what the person needs and what the situation calls for. so it takes that theory instead of just like blind application of write me an annual plan. It's like, how do you have that plan, and how do you accommodate all of the roadblocks and obstacles and difficulties along the way? And I think
Yeah.
that's where you start to get like, you understand a lot, you learn a lot, you apply it, and then it's like, now how do we fit it to a context or a given context of an athlete at whatever skill level, whatever background. So someone comes in, they've been an athlete their entire life. They've played collegiate athletics, football or basketball or whatever it is. They started weightlifting. They're self-taught, and then you catch them at year 6. Okay, well, how do you transform all that information or knowledge you have to that context of, this person does whatever numbers. They're at this point in their career. They're at this point in their development. They have this much time given how old they are. It's like, now create something that's effective and properly dosed and formulated. And that's like, that's coaching prowess. That's kind of where the fun is. But it takes like a lot of saturation of just understanding theory to get to that. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I would say that there's a couple points there too. Is like different coaching approaches and styles work with different people. I've worked with a lot of athletes remotely, and I've worked with a lot of people in person, and like you can have very different approaches to the level of detail, right? You coach somebody in person, and a lot of it might be you building them up and pushing and driving them, and you could go too far in that regard where like they're just hanging off of every single rep looking for you to give them a cue or something, right? And because you have such exposure to them, it's like becomes this thing of like, oh shit, like they're getting worse because they have no autonomy. So they don't have a sense of like, I got to go heavier now, or I should take it back. Right. I get the plan. And so they end up in a spot where you're just like doing too much. And then the other side too, you can have like remote athletes where, maybe they are doing a ton of training on their own. They send you just a little bit of feedback, and like, you're kind of struggling to figure out exactly where they're at. Cause like, they'll send you a message every few days, like, hey, my back hurts or, whatever.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, fuck, what did you do? Right. I say all this because it's like one of those things that really just kind of comes down to, are you able to adapt your approach to the person? Somebody who doesn't communicate well, you should probably be the kind of person who reaches out more,
Totally.
because they're gonna benefit from that. It doesn't mean that everybody gets the same thing. It just means everybody gets what they need to be successful. And that's how you should see your coaching. The way you apply coaching is like, how do I get the person across the table or whatever it is across the room to be as successful as they can be? And like, what do I have to do? And how do I change my style to work with them? That doesn't mean that you let people tell you how to do your job or those things, but it just means like, hey, if somebody needs more, if I need to text somebody their workouts and text back and forth with their lifting, because it'll like kind of help me, I can help them guide the weights that day or whatever. Yeah, I mean, that's a practice you should employ if it's going to work. Some people don't need any of that. They just want to do everything. They do everything to a T, no matter what, and at the end of the day, like, you'll know if your programming was good because they did every single piece of it. Alex LaChance was like that. She was just like, you could tell her anything, she'd just get it done, no matter what it took. And like, there's no fear when you'd send a workout to Alex that like, oh, she's probably not going to get this done, or I don't know if she'll do all this, or I don't know what she'll skip.
Yeah.
It was like, I hope I didn't write too much because it could break her, and she'll just go that far, right? So it's like just different people. Everyone's different. Like, your style should be, find the thing and the method you are going to use to help that person. Make sure it is tailored to them, that it works for everybody. Yeah.
That's the beauty of the platform that we've been using, and it will be released, for beta soon. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the beauty of it is that if it gives you everything, you can be far more selective given the person. And what I mean by that is, you have some people who you'll write every single weight for, and then you have some people where it's like, it's so tough to predict readiness that I'll leave these open. I'll leave it open-ended. And it's like, just get the work done, because at least we can manage workload. But if there's such wide swings in readiness or your ability to perform on a given day, it's like, I can't tell you to do this weight, because if you can't do that, you're just going to blow up, and then suddenly we're kind of in the spiral.
Yeah.
So instead of fighting our way out of it, we're trying to, improve from baseline. So it's like with one person, it's much more open-ended. You tell me what you did. With another person, it's I'll tell you everything you're going to do, and then I know you'll get that done. So you need some sort of you need everything so that you can kind of whittle away versus like, how do we add?
Right.
How do we construct?
Well, that is one reason why, shameless plug, but that is one reason why we designed it the way we did. So like you said, like you don't have to be, I mean, some people need explicit stuff. You need to write every single weight down for them. And that helps them, right? Because they're just going to go after that. And you can make those finite adjustments. Other people, you might give them, like you said, like a training session that has no sets or reps listed, just instructions, and says, hey, log, work up to a heavy weight and log what you did, right? So you can still collect the data, but you don't necessarily have to be explicit in stating every rep and set. And then on the feedback side too, like, the ability to just write a comment and check off, hey, I see your videos, they're good, everything looks great, all the way down to, taking screenshots and drawing lines on them, or doing a full-on voiceover, with picture-in-picture, like annotation of a whole rep or a whole lift or every video. All of those levels of like, you don't always want to eat dessert, right? You've got to kind of like, sometimes you just need a comment that says, hey, the squats were good, like you're on track. And that's enough. Sometimes you need to break it down and totally give someone a new cue. I've had that. You probably had this happen before so many times. I'll just say some cue that I've been saying for 15 years. I said the other day, and I said some cue that to me, I was like, I've said this like a million times. It's like a timing thing. And the person was like, I've never heard that, or I haven't thought of that. And then they'll do it, and like the lifting, is a little weird at first, but then maybe gets a little better. And you're kind of like, oh shit. Like if you just take it for granted, like if you don't go through that process of trying to deliver feedback or trying to throw cues at people or trying to do these things, you might forget it. And so, as a coach, like you kind of reminded of the fact that like maybe people haven't heard the thing you said, especially if they have been training with other people for a long time, and, or they're brand new, like they just might not get these cues. So I say that from the perspective that the ability to give a lot of feedback or a little bit of feedback and do it easily makes it, a better scenario for you to try a lot of that stuff, right? You can throw cues in there, you can do whatever coaching you want to do, and you have the tools to do it. So yeah, I mean, it was designed very much it's designed for coaching. It's designed for coaches to do really good coaching. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it.
No, there's a lot to say there, and I'll kind of relate this to nutrition because we like to draw parallels. But imagine that you have a craving, and you're like, I really want something sweet, but you only buy the same 5 foods every day. It's like, well, I can still eat, I can still get all my calories and energy, whatever, like all the energy I need, but it's like I can't accommodate day-to-day fluctuations in preference. Or actually, if there's like a deficiency, it's like, I feel like I got my blood panel back and I need vitamin D. I seem to be deficient. It's like, but only the same 5 foods. So that ability to like broaden everything, every opportunity or possibility, and then to narrow it down to the context, which is just what you discussed, which is every athlete is going to be different every session. And that's kind of like the whole emerging strategies framework. It's like someone's going to come in and they're a completely different person. And that could be for acute psychosocial reasons, which is, I just broke up with my partner, death in the family, all these situations could happen. And it's like, so I'm not going to test my lifts. Like I'm not going to do a mock meet. I mean, you're going to hit a wall fast. I don't know why you're smiling when I said death in the family. That's kind of more.
Well, I was going to say, in that scenario, break up with your partner and death in the family could be the same person in West Virginia.
And it still hurts all the same, Max, because we're all people who experience situations like that similarly. But you can then accommodate that situation and say, okay, well, I know this is technically a different person. They're a complex system. We have to accommodate life stressors and fluctuations and exactly what's going on. So, hey, let's scale things back. Let's move exercises, delete exercises, add exercises, change the focus of the session. And I think kind of when you have that buffet, or you have you have a thousand things you can choose from, it makes it a lot easier to do that effectively versus being really limited, which is, you know, well, I have a spreadsheet and I really can't change what's on there because it's annoying and time consuming. So, hey, just do day one instead of day three. And maybe we'll do something different next week. But when I copy and paste it over, it's hard to change anyway. So we might just keep rolling.
I think to me, that's the essence of what I believe is the essence of, that's kind of at the core of why, you know, we built it like we did it, or why we build the product, is because a lot of this stuff is in the details. Like, you can go in the gym and snatch and clean and jerk all day and not get better because you're, you know, training too light and you're not making any progress. You're not squatting enough or getting strong enough or whatever it is. And so you can end up in these places where, like, it's very easy to, you know, do a lot of things that don't get you better.
Right.
Great coaching, I feel like, and really doing a good job, that the things I've learned over the years are, it's all in the, like, little stuff in the details, right? It doesn't mean that all the details add up, but it's like, if you take the time to calculate training volumes and numbers, like, you can adjust it. Maybe you are training a little bit heavier than you should be, and that's making your athletes a little slower or a little more sluggish, right? Or you're doing way more squatting than you probably need to get better. You can identify that. If you don't take any count of, you know, hey, how am I doing things? Are these things really the things that are going to drive people forward? Then you're going to have a hard time. And what you do ultimately as coaches is you deviate to, people kind of regress to the mean, where it's like, what is the baseline level of functionality the tools I use have, and my skills in using those tools. And that kind of, I feel like, largely guides how people coach. A good example of this, I know it's, you know, it's like, think about like an app like True Coach or something like Google Sheets. If you use Google Sheets, but you're not very good, you don't know how to create formulas and build sheets out and make the, you know, take the most advantage of it, you're going to coach in that way that fits your abilities. You're going to stop when it's like, well, you know, do I really understand how to build this template a little better or make it work more? Not really. Or like, am I collecting videos for every single set, or am I collecting one video a week in a different app? You know, so it's like, you just kind of deviate to these things. Same with something like True Coach, where it's like, if you don't have good data collection, you might not use data to drive training decisions. That makes sense. If you don't have, you know, a good platform, if you just do emails, you might not care much about the program. So yeah, it's like a lot to be said for the ability to manage all the little details easily and reduce the skill necessary to get access to those details and be able to take advantage of them.
And I think to jump in, I think this is essentially all built on the premise and what we've been kind of shouting from the rooftops for months and years, which is coaches should want to get better. You know, there should be like a rising tide aspect to all of this. If you're, and that's where we start to talk about coaching effectiveness or style, which is, here's how coaches coach because they think it's best. What's the reality of the situation, or how can they actually do that more effectively? And it's same with programming, right? It's like, here's how coaches program. You could survey them, you could do something that's qualitative, and then you can get their feedback and say, like, most coaches coach like this because, you know, X and Y reason. It should ultimately have a performance orientation. I mean, that's what people pay you for. I don't think they pay you for friendship.
I hope not, because I don't I'm not a good friend.
Yeah, I'm sure many people would reciprocate that. So you have this performance orientation. It's like, well, how do you improve your coaching? And it's like, you give them the tools. I mean, it's essentially a carpenter saying, well, I've been using a hammer for 15 years as my only solution to every problem. So if you give them a drill, or you give them a screwdriver, you give them some other tool, it's like, okay, well, we'll train you up on how to use it. And the idea is that you become a better carpenter. another example, something that came to mind is, if you have knowledge of nutrition, you only understand macronutrients, you don't understand micronutrients. It's like, yeah, you can construct an effective diet to maintain body composition, but you're missing out on, how to optimize for health. So it's this idea of, we present you with all the tools, you take that because you have a performance orientation for your athletes and for yourself, and then you develop as a coach, and you can more effectively prescribe training. And you can use information you would never have access to otherwise, which is all that data, all that information. And you can look at patterns, and you can say, well, how do I apply information gleaned from, looking across sessions in a week, everything's in the red, everything's a 10 RPE, everything's really hard. That probably shouldn't be the case. So I'm going to use that information to guide programming decisions later, where we can look at, I look at the analytics on the platform, and I'll look at the bars of volume, and then I'll look at intensity, and I'll say, am I seeing enough undulation?
Right.
Because I don't want to just redline someone all the time having the same volumes and high intensities. So that's actually super helpful just from a glance. I don't need anything else besides a glance to say I'm doing at least a decent job of undulating the work. Now, how effective it is, that's different, but like, at least I'm not drilling them down every single session. So
yeah, if you start to look at your weekly structure, like your microcycle, and there's like no undulation, every day is the same volume, and intensity is just kind of a flat line, it's like, that's a rough program. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said for it. It's a good example where it's like a minor thing, but it gives you a quick assessment, like, oh, maybe I should make a bit more undulation between volume and intensity these weeks, or maybe week to week I should have a bigger discrepancy between those two factors. Because like, that's those little things, like those things for sure make a huge difference. The ability to create a program that is driving adaptation versus a program that's something where there are a lot of athletes out there that are just savages that will work so hard, but they struggle to get better, or they get tweaked or injured because it's like too much volume, too much intent, or there isn't enough change. So there's, the recovery isn't great. So yeah, I mean, like, for sure, all those little things make a huge difference. And the ability to just take them and put them at your fingertips is, I think, the thing that will elevate people's coaching, because now it's there's no longer a limitation on like, oh, I don't know how to use these things, or I don't know how to do this, or I can't collect the data, or I can't do these things. Because if it's available, to anyone who's using the platform, it becomes used by people.
Well, and I'll say, there's a quote from, I was in the weight room talking to some of the soccer players, and it was, when you train hard and you make progress, that's good. That's good coaching. Like, that's great coaching. When you train hard and you don't make progress, that's evil. And I think if you're a coach, you have to look at, all of your athletes are going to train hard. They're going to work. They're going to endure a lot. And it's like, if they're not making progress, like, that's kind of like your duty to help them out. Because who wants to just hit their, I mean, you mentioned that this has been your life's mission, I guess, but who wants to just bash their head against a wall to make a window? So realistically, it's like, how do you effectively prescribe training that gets someone better, knowing that, like, it's going to be hard, it's going to be challenging, and it's like, it's kind of your duty to do that the right way. And with some people, they have to work even harder, but it's like, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is going to be worth it, versus, there's a swamp at the end of the rainbow, and you're just going to be swimming in filth after you run this program.
I yesterday put a couple of polls on my Instagram stories because I was curious to get people's perspective. One was, what do you look for in a coach as an athlete? And then one was, what do you look for as an athlete? What do you look for in an athlete as a coach? And I kind of expected the answers I got for the coaching, which is like, very much, I would summarize it as a lot of like communication and knowledge and understanding, and like,
Are you still there? You're muted. No, I can't hear you. Mandy, can you hear Max? There we go.
How about now?
Yeah. say something?
Now,
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Okay. So what I was saying is, yeah, you get like a lot of the like communication, trust, knowledge, experience, which makes a lot of sense. From the athlete side, or the coaching side, I thought it'd be a little different. Where I would think a lot of coaches would be asking more for like some degree of natural talent, right? Like, because like, yeah, I mean, as a coach, like, if I could look for anything in an athlete, I'd be like somebody who can win the Olympics, right? Someone who already is doing those numbers, then I just step in. I look great. No, but like you would think it's more that, but you hear in the survey, I heard a lot more of this like people willing to commit, like an athlete who's willing to participate, who works really hard, who does all these things. And after I thought about it, I'm like, oh, that's really actually a positive thing, because that means a lot of coaches see themselves as very capable. They just need somebody to buy in and do what they're asking them to do, right? If you were a coach who was who was feeling like you're not capable of improving somebody, you would probably think that the most important qualities are genetic talent and these things, and they are super important. I mean, you're not gonna, not everybody can be a world champion, but the idea that like if you're really only searching for that person who's super dedicated, who's committed, then it shows that there's a sense from the coaches, at least that answered the survey, like, hey, they believe that they're capable and they're going to try to drive that person forward. I think that's what creates a good sense of trust, is that like outside of having reputation or being able to do it, is the ability to, the sense that you believe in your own abilities. If you believe in your abilities to coach well and to program well and to do all these things well, all you're going to look for is a person who's committed, right? Well, that's going to be your first thing. So to circle back and sort of plug the platform again, a lot of the idea around believing in yourself is going to stem from feeling like you have all the information, better tools, the ability to do this stuff at a level that is higher than just sort of winging it text message to text message, or, copy and paste, Google Sheets back and forth. Right. So it's like, I think there's just a lot to be said for, coaching being elevated by tools versus just something that like, oh, this is good enough. It's like I can send a string of text that says, hey, max out today.
I mean, to be fair though, the more complex the tool, the more education and background needed to use it effectively. Because I think,
for sure,
with a hammer, it's like you can kind of make sense of how to use it. You got a blunt head, and that's probably perfect for hitting nails or people, depending on your preference. But with a coaching platform with data and analytics and AI and all the things that come along with it that are important in the coaching process, it's like you need to understand how to use it. You're not going to look at a chart and say, wow, big spikes, low spikes, good program, or the line is wavy, therefore you have to have some semblance of knowledge around intensities and volumes and exercises and structures. So it's like, it's not that you're coming to the platform with that talent, but it's like you're coming to the platform with that openness of experience to understand it and use it effectively. And it's like, and then how do you provide the education and background knowledge to help elevate the coaches who are using it? So it's like you come to it with your expertise, and then you gain more along the way. So coaching process as well as a athlete development process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the crux of all of this, right? It's like, how do we tie everything together and put ourselves in a place where we give athletes not only the tools, but the knowledge to use them. And then there can be a more centralized, is the wrong word, but there can be a more communal sort of like dialogue between people, common glossaries and these kind of things. Because ultimately it's like, shouldn't we all be trying to learn a lot more from each other and grow in a way that, builds up the whole sport versus just, everybody making a one-off thing and just going that route? Like, hey, this is my thing and we do this, and someone else on the other side of the country just completely isolated from them build something totally different, or very, very similar, but they could have both learned from each other's, mistakes and shortcomings.
Well, I think with things like um, things like articles, things like podcasts, they're dead knowledge. It's like they occupy a definite amount of time, and once it occupies that time, it's like solidified as what it is. It's never going to change. Whereas with the platform, it's like this is an ever evolving thing. Like you put me on it, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" And then it's like it's developed so rapidly, and it's like, "Holy shit!" Like it's seeing that stuff come to fruition over time because it's constantly being worked on. Um, so it's very much like a living product, a living platform, like a living place to become a better coach versus everything else that's going to exist unless someone wants to step in and do something similar is going to be dead knowledge. And at some point it's going to be outdated because there's no means of updating. It's like you can do a second edition, but that's only going to kind of like add commentary to the original product. It's not going to revolutionize it. The point is to revolutionize coaching. This is the means I see that happening through.
Yeah, 100%. For sure. That's good.
That's always a very profound quote from Max. Cool, interesting, sure, all right.
Oh, nice. That's a good one. I say that a lot. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything more you want to add, but I think that was a good discussion on
Was it cool, Max?
It was cool. That was cool. Hey, nice job, sport. Good job, kiddo. We'll watch that snatch video when I get back from the store. I pick up some folks. Oh, by the way, take care of your mom while I'm gone. You're the man of the house now. No, I don't know what else to say. I mean, I think like we beat a dead horse a lot, which is a lot of this like get better data, get better numbers, get better tracking. Try to implement things that make sense in training. Try to implement principle-based approaches and use evidence-based practices to do things. There's also just this like at some point you need to have the ability to do that, and how do you make it easier, right?
So I'm taking a qualitative research methods class, and basically we have an assignment which is do some sort of like literature review, come up with a study and kind of put it together. My idea actually was how sports scientists, strength coaches, whatever, use technology, because there's a proliferation of available technologies like the Oura Ring, force plates, force frames, velocity-based tracking devices, markerless motion capture. Like you have all these technologies, basically just a carousel of technologies you can kind of pick and pull from. And then it's like, how's it implemented and how's it used in practice? And I think that's a completely different story. Like the purchasing and the implementation is different from the actual utility or usefulness of it and how it's used. So I wanted to say, like, in my profession, like how are technologies used in practice? There's little available literature. So the idea was like, go to medicine, look how new technologies are taken up and incorporated, and then kind of bring that over and say, what are best practices in medicine? What would best practices be in sports science, strength and conditioning, weightlifting, powerlifting, strength coaching? So I think there's going to be a lot of intersection of, this is like new technology, basically, that, it's basically a panacea for the weightlifting coaches and powerlifting coaches and strength coaches ails. How's it taken up? How's it used? And what are best practices? And it's like, if best practices aren't, developed for the person and performance orientation, it's like, how do we get people there? It's not like a woe is me, this is the lay of the land, but it's like, okay, well, how do we reorient and redirect? So those are kind of my closing thoughts.
For sure, I agree with that, John. I think a lot of this is about changing the paradigm of how coaching is done, but more so from the perspective of like, how do we bring everybody's level up a bit more versus how do we just throw more knowledge or more stuff in the world, right? We want a real tool that actually elevates the lowest level of coach, the person who's very new, maybe just starting, or the person who's interested, but how do we use technology to sort of elevate them? And then on top of that, how do you also provide something that a really advanced coach could benefit from? It's not just something that is like, you know, like only suits one person, but all of those people need the same thing. They might just not be aware of it, but yeah, that's the goal.
Awesome. You want to talk about your back squat you did?
Yeah, sure. Huge accomplishment. I literally back squatted 50% of my old max. I did 160. No, that's less than 50%. Because I've done what's 160 is 320. So I've done more than that. So less than 50%. But I did 160 for a single. I'm gonna go squat again this morning. Probably do a little more, maybe some more volume. My plan, my goal here is I've told Hunter this and you that I'm gonna squat 275 kilos in December. That's my plan, my goal.
Okay. Where are you gonna squat it? You're gonna squat in the training hall at finals?
In a Smith machine. They're going to bring the rack onto the platform. They're going to bring it out to the stars platform. They're going to be an exhibition. It's a whole deal. I'm going to wear a top hat, everything. Yeah, I arranged it with Matt Sitchy already. I was like, hey, this is a big deal. A lot of people have been asking about this. There's exactly 2 people that care how much I squat. I'm not even one of them. No, I told Hunter I needed motivation. So I was like, I got to do something. So I had to make a commitment. So I told him I'll do 115 kilos more than this by the end of the year. I have no idea if I'll be able to get there. But I feel like I can get up to 250 probably pretty quickly if I just start trying. The bigger thing is my back. I just need to make my back strong again. Just weak. Just like a fucking office man right now. I have a body of an office worker.
I wish we could cut that out, but we can't.
No, that's in there. It's permanent office soft. But yeah, I'll be ready. And we'll see. Maybe I'll do it sooner. Maybe I can get it in sooner.
I doubt you'll do it sooner.
Okay, well, more motivation.
I would love to see you do it. I mean, I'd love to watch all those slabs of beef on the bar.
I get motivated when people tell me no.
Well, you're not going to do it.
Okay, you're probably right.
Well, Max, there's no fun in that.
Yeah, so that's my goal. I feel like I have to make it a public thing so I actually commit to it.
Yeah.
If I don't, it's just gonna be like, I could just kind of.
You should put up a poll. See how many people think you can do
it. What do I do if I don't? If I don't make it, if I don't do it, then I have to give everybody the app for free.
I mean, well, what do you get if you do it?
If that was the case, I'd be headed straight to Mexico. Go to the pharmacy. Give me everything you have. I don't know. Yeah, I could do that.
Okay.
Yeah, let me try. Yeah, I guess I would do it at AO finals unless we do like a camp or something.
Oh, that'd be great.
Or at Worlds. I should do it at Worlds. I should go to Bahrain and just like go find some. I can't mog any of the Chinese guys; they're too strong. But you know, when all the media starts lifting, I'll just bust out a big squat.
Oh, you squat more than Seb. Congratulations.
Yeah, that's the massive accomplishment. Yeah, that's my plan. I'm gonna do that. I want to try a lift again so I can do like one more. I want to do one more powerlifting competition. And
which
like
one?
Just any, it doesn't matter. Like USAPL nationals, or, not nationals, like Raw Masters nationals, something like that, or even just like a local thing.
Yeah.
Just to do one more and sort of like, you know, be done with it. I mean, not like I really was like my first passion, but like I just kind of want to end like, hey, I did a good meet and it was fun, and that was it. The last one I did, I tried to squat. It was like 2015. I tried to squat 340 or 345, and I almost had it, but I was like twisting on the way up, and like it was twisting enough that I was like, something's gonna break if I keep going, and then so I just stopped. I quit on myself. I quit in the middle of the squat, and yeah, and then I bench pressed something. I don't know. Let's not talk about that.
What did you deadlift?
320-ish, something like that.
Okay. Was that your PR?
Yeah, 310, 320 was my best. I should have done more. I should have pulled more and trained more. I didn't take it as serious as I did weightlifting because it was kind of like, it just wasn't the same thing. It wasn't exciting.
Yeah.
But yeah, this plan. I gotta have some kind
You
of.
You heard it here first, everyone.
Yeah, the 6 people listening to this.
The 60 who might.
Yeah. Do you have anything you want to throw out there? Anything you want to add? Clean and jerk.
They actually, Weightlifting House just put a teaser in one of the emails.
Wow.
It's going to be released. So I think it's like kind of the process is kind of moving now.
2 things as well. We're going to do a weightlifting AI camp in the UK in like the first weekend of August. So right before the Olympic Games. It's going to be at one of the universities there in Birmingham. So check that out. We have a link in my Instagram, and you can check with Weightlifting House. They should send an email out. And then I'm trying to set up a training camp in Texas. I'm going to try to do it at Adam's Gym, Stonehenge weightlifting in Austin. That'd be a ton of fun. I've talked about going down there before. I'm actually kind of considering doing like a Texas road trip where I would go down to Texas, go do a camp there, and then drive to a couple of their cities and maybe do some podcasts with different gym owners, but also kind of show them software, show them Coachlogik, and see how many people would be interested in, doing that kind of thing. So that'd be fun. Preferably not when it's 400 degrees outside.
Totally. Well, if anyone listening or will listen is interested, just reach out to Max.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
All right. I guess we'll be back next week with Alex Long, who's going to talk about regional hypertrophy.
Nice.
Let's do it.
Forehead hypertrophy.
We'll talk to you all next week on another mentorship call.